Well, we got a special treat these next 2 days. I had a chance to sit down with Bucs general manager Jason Licht, kind of a two-part conversation, if you will. And the first part today we'll be discussing sort of, his place within the Bucs. 50 years of NFL football here in Tampa Bay. Of course, he's been the general manager now. This is going on his 12th season. Man, it's hard to believe, one of the longest tenured GMs in the NFL. And, it didn't really start out that well. I was talking to him, and I was like, hey, man, not for nothing, but like, you went 6 years and didn't make the playoffs. And he admitted, like, the Glazers were very patient. They stuck with him. Now, a lot of things transpired, you could argue, might have been out of his control. They certainly had a number of coaching changes. And, I think when you commit yourself to the number one overall pick at quarterback with Jameis Winston, you probably owe it to yourself and your organization. I know the Glazers really wanted to exhaust every opportunity they could think of to make Jameis the face of that franchise, because they saw the talent, they saw his desire, but it just wasn't working, although it came very close to working, at the very end until the last two games of his Buccaneer career. But interesting just talking to him about the involvement of how they process the draft, the various coaches, and a big culture change which occurred, I think, when they brought in Bruce Arians. I think that was a big move, the last best chance they felt that Jameis had to really become that quarterback they wanted him to be. And when it didn't happen, then it was about door number two, right? Then it was about door number two. So without getting too deep into this, I want you to enjoy the conversation talking about the 50 years and just what it means to Jason to be such a big part of that. And of course, the biggest part, bringing a Super Bowl championship right here to Tampa Bay, their second in franchise history. We'll get to Jason in just a moment, but first, hey, make sure you get on down to Breitling Boutique at International Plaza Mall. That's our sponsors, and there's a reason. It's because they have the best timepieces you will ever own. Swiss Watchmaker has been in business for over 140 years. They've been at International Plaza now for 5+ years, and you're going to love the collection of watches. First, you're going to love the store. It's in the center of the mall, upstairs, second floor. Go in there, spend some time. You're going to enjoy the customer service. They're used to dealing with professional athletes. You'll probably run into a Buccaneer or two, as I have when I've shopped there. But you're going to love and learn a lot about the various watches that they have, the chronomats, the Navitimers for men, ladies' watches for your wife, for your girlfriend. These are sports watches. They're durable. They're absolutely beautiful. And she can choose from an array of many, many different colored wristbands to suit her fancy. And so I think right now, and this is important, while supplies last, they've been celebrating the NFL's 104th year anniversary, and they've done it with 32 different team watches. Again, some of these may be sold out, but you want to get down there and check them out anyway. Each team has its own watch. They have the color of the team in the face of the watch, these beautiful chronomat watches with the logo. Go to tampabay.com. You're likely to see the Buccaneers watch as well. It's a collector's item for sure if you're an NFL fan or just a sports fan or just somebody who wants a beautiful timepiece. It's Breitling Boutique, International Plaza Mall. When you go, make sure you tell them that you heard about it on Sports Day Tampa Bay. You came in at a time where this franchise had been, and it kind of continued a little bit after you got here, where, after John Gruden was fired, they had this period where they had 5 coaches in 10 years. And I think you had like 4 and 7 or something like that. Like, it was crazy, right? Like, came in 14, and then 2 years later, Lovey, and then it was Dirk, and then it was
3 years later, it was
Bruce, and then the unexpected transition, which really was a change. I mean, we all know that continuity wins in the NFL, right? And you wouldn't have planned it that way if you didn't need to. But, like, how difficult was that to get, and I know Bruce is going to be a big part of this, but to finally get some of that stability. But while that was happening on the coaching side, you were continually building a team that was going to be a Super Bowl champion, right?
Yeah. So we took Jameis, 1 overall, and going back to that draft, we needed a quarterback.
No question.
I took this job with no quarterback
right
on the roster, and no starting level quarterback, I should say.
Yeah.
And took Jameis. So plan was to build around Jameis. And
which a lot of people would have done.
Sure, which is the thing to do. Sure. You know, right thing to do.
Right.
And what took us a while to figure out is just Jameis just wasn't the right quarterback.
Yeah.
But
you had to give him time to every chance to prove it one way or the other.
And to ultimately, I've got a ton of respect for Dirk. I would have loved to, can't go back in time, figure it out, but what Dirk could have done with, Tom Brady.
Sure.
Never know.
Right.
But we brought in Bruce, who's one of my closer friends, but super respected quarterback whisperer,
all that. Yeah.
All that,
and you didn't know that he would come back to coaching, right, initially? I mean, he had retired.
No.
And it looked like, for all the world, the medical stuff, he had a lot of reasons for retiring. And even though maybe he didn't like television that much, it still wasn't a slam dunk that he would do it for anybody.
It wasn't. We went into that coaching search, myself and the Glazer family, without Bruce even on the list initially. And after Dirk had been let go. And we, it wasn't like, man, I don't know, it was like a week or a few days, I can't remember right now, but whatever it was, I was back in the owner's offices back here meeting, and it was one of them asked, you think Bruce would, Arians, they've heard me talk about Bruce, experience with him. You think Bruce would come out and go, I said, I really don't know. I haven't talked to him about it. When he was covering us that year in the preseason for a preseason game, he was telling me how much he loved what he was doing. So I didn't know. Then I was a little foggy how this went. Did I call him? Did I not? Now I remember seeing an article on NFL.com about the Browns job or something. And it was, would you be interested in coaching? He said, hell yeah, if it's the right place. Maybe he was referring, I don't know. Anyway.
Somebody asked him the question.
And he said, depends.
Would he rule it out? And he didn't.
Yeah. So I said, there's our answer, So I texted him. I said, would you be interested? And he said, with you, hell yeah. So.
And he wanted to get his band back together.
And it just so happened that he said that all the stars were aligned, that all of his guys were available. It was like, it really was truly remarkable how
it was.
Todd got let go, so he was available. I mean, on down the line.
The whole staff.
So, but we didn't start off. In fact, we started the interview process with a few candidates before we even knew Bruce
was available.
Yeah.
And the idea, of course, he's a great coach, and you had worked with him in Arizona, but the idea was quarterback whisperer.
To get the most
anyone
out of Jameis.
Can get the best out of Jameis, it's going to be Bruce.
Right. And that was the infamous year of the 30-30
club. Yeah.
Yeah. And
I wrote about it in Tom Moore's book. He throws the pick six, and Deion Jones, who's on your team now, and Bruce is walking off the field. Tom Moore's like,
Pro Bowl.
Yeah, he's walking off the field with Tom Moore. He goes, well, that's it. Meaning we're moving on. We got to see who's behind door number 2. Remember?
Yep. But during that process, we were putting together.
You were building pieces.
Yeah.
Actually, you could argue started with the biggest piece. Might have been your first pick overall when you got the job, which was Mike Evans.
For sure.
And he had grinded through about 7 seasons without getting to the postseason, but he was still here, still productive, still all those things. And you had Godwin, and you had pieces, a lot of good pieces.
We had traded for JPP.
Yeah.
We had signed Ndamukong.
Shaq.
We had Shaq. That was Bruce's first year when we signed Shaq.
Yeah.
And
he went 19 and a half.
Yeah. So, but there were a lot, like you're mentioning, Mike grinded 7 seasons, but I always felt so bad for Mike, but also Levante.
Yeah.
Will Golston.
Oh, yeah.
These guys that had been here for so long and not
played a lot of good football and didn't get to experience postseason at all.
Yeah. But Bruce was the catalyst.
It's hard to separate Arians and Brady, although clearly Tom Brady, greatest quarterback of all time. The pursuit of him I've written about, we've talked about before. I don't know if I've ever asked you, like, was there a sort of, I mean, I know there was a phone call, there was interaction at some point in time, but like when you were talking about shoeless Joe Jackson, Operation Shoeless Joe Jackson, as Spike Tech called it. Was there a kind of a eureka moment? It's like, we're going to get this guy. Like Tom Brady is going to come to Tampa Bay and be our quarterback.
It just started becoming a little bit more clearer and clearer through that. Now you can't talk to him.
Yeah, right.
And you really can't talk to the agent.
Right.
And but you're getting signs and you're hearing reports in the media that the Bucs are really, a probable destination, and you know that that's coming from them.
Mm-hmm.
And
because they're looking for a home and they're putting out signals and people are asking, and yeah.
I remember we were at the combine and we were getting ready to do our interviews and sat down with Bruce. I said, no, you can't mention quarterbacks by name. You can't mention.
I was there.
Someone asked the question, goes, hell yeah, I'd answer his call.
Yeah, would you pick up the phone for any quarterback that's available? Yeah, Tom Brady.
But anyway.
that kind of sealed it. Yeah.
I think that helped it.
I do too.
But there were a lot of this may happen moments.
Yeah.
But until the final,
don't know
until the final call that Tom called me, and I was over at Bruce's house when he was able to call me. Mm-hmm. That was a moment I'll never forget. I was on the phone with him for a few minutes, but then I said, I want you to talk to your head coach, and then they on the phone for an hour or whatever, and then Chris and Bruce and I went immediately to 717 and
celebrate
and it was that was a great moment.
That was a story when Mike Greenberg's brother, I think, runs the contract up. And of all the things that are happening then, COVID,
yeah,
the most unbelievable, in world, much less football or pro sports, but everything was shut down.
So we couldn't bring him in. We couldn't do the traditional press conference.
Right.
And nobody knew how to Zoom yet.
That's right.
So we did. I think we did the old-fashioned audio.
I think it was a conference call, voice conference call where you called on people. Yeah,
right.
It was old school.
I don't think Zoom came around for another 2 weeks or whatever.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. That was our first press conference with him. Was on the phone, and they would call on people to, to ask a question or whatever. So he gets here, and of course, the rest is kind of history. But I mean, that whole, I felt like that you had kind of, the culture had begun to be built by the type of players that you brought in here, and Bruce sort of had begun, because if you remember that last season, even with Jameis and all the interceptions or turnovers, you were 7-7. He had just thrown for 460 yards, I think, against the Lions to win his second game in a row. There were 2 games left, and I'm going, if they go 9-7, there's a chance he does get the contract, right? And then the last 2 games don't go that way. But the team had really started to, there's a lot of elements that you put together in those pieces. And then, I mean, I guess it goes without saying between Bruce and Tom, and of course the play of Tom, but that culture really just, was ingrained, right? I mean, at that point.
Yeah, it was. And those two are a lot different.
Way different. Yeah.
But together, I mean, they're both going to realize, if they are, I'm sure they have already, but that was the perfect mix, because you had Tom, who was very calculated and wanted the high percentage throw, and in his mind, he's like, this is a 90% play. This play only hits on 16% of the time, so why would I hit that? And Bruce is like,
5 streaks, baby.
Take it down. No, that's
And that was the change during the season. Was I think maybe the second half of the Kansas City game, they talk about, maybe even after the bye week, talks about, okay, shore up the protection. I've talked to Bruce about this. If we can make Tom confident in the protection, we can get guys vertical.
Yep.
And boy, did you guys start throwing the ball down the field after that.
Yep.
All the way through to a Super Bowl.
Yep. Biggest play being the NFC Championship game right before half. So
no question, Scott Miller. Yeah. We're going for it, baby.
I don't know if Tom Brady would have called that play. I don't know.
He might have done something to get the field goal. I'm not sure. Yeah. But he did take the shot that day.
He did.
And it hit. And that's, in my mind, maybe the second greatest play in Buccaneer history for what it meant because it got you on top of the Packers in the NFC Championship game.
Yeah, the Rondé pick six.
Rondé being the pick six would be number one.
Yeah.
But that Scotty Miller, that call, that throw, in Green Bay to get you on top. And then, of course, the second half was a little shaky, but you guys got it done. So just to put a cap on the Super Bowl season, what's it like? You've been in football all those years. You're at the top of the mountain. I don't know that I might have walked off at that point. I don't know that I could have come back for another year, but you certainly had plenty of players and reason to do so. And Tom came back for 2 more years. How do you describe it when you've been in football as long as you have to? And it wasn't, look, there was 25,000 people over there, and many of them were healthcare workers.
Yep.
Right. And you had cardboard cutouts in the stands, and it wasn't the full Super Bowl experience, but it was unique.
It was unique.
And it was at home.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Well, there's a lot of it wasn't the true Super Bowl experience. I've been lucky enough to have been to 5, but been a winner at 2.
Yeah.
Because of the COVID, like you said, but there was something about that COVID year that brought us all closer.
No question.
And I mean, there was nobody else in the building, just the football team, just the football staff out here on the practice squad or practice field.
Eating outside together,
watching tape out there together, meetings out there together. And then even as a staff, so the night before the Super Bowl, anybody that was going to be on the sidelines had to stay at the Grand Hyatt. So I was there, Spytek, Greeny, Beal, Rob McCartney, all the guys, Jackie. So I had one of those suites that overlooked the bay, and it was nice. I was like, holy cow, this is, I mean, if my dad could see this now, what I mean?
Yeah.
And here I am, I don't deserve this, And then we all met there's a little cutout in that hotel at the top floor. It's where one of the restaurants is, and nobody could go to the restaurant. So they gave us the whole outdoor area, and we just started drinking some wine. There's about 10 of us.
Yeah.
And then went through another bottle, and we're just looking out of the bay, and we're just reflecting on the whole year. We wouldn't have done that if it weren't for the rules of COVID. We would have been, in a hotel somewhere, just a regular night before the game.
Right.
But it was there was something about just the bonding of the staff at the time that still is intact today because of it. So
really was. It was a special connection that those players had, that the coaching staff had. And Tom rightfully gets a lot of credit, for what he brought, obviously. And I think when you signed him, you said, even before you won, he will help us long before he's gone, the way Peyton Manning sort of helped galvanize and show guys what it takes to win a championship.
Yeah, and that's definitely been the case.
Yeah.
It's had a definite trickle-down effect. And even though Baker wasn't here, I think Baker's heard enough stories, and he had to walk into Tom's shoes. So he had to, prove that he's capable of leading this team and being this franchise leader. And he has been all of that.
How rare is that to go from the greatest of all time, and here's the number 1 overall pick that's now on his 4th team in 18 months, and yet you get him on kind of a make-it contract at $4 million, but he's still hungry. He's willing to fight for his job. He's willing to come in here and win it. But almost, and we all know Baker's personality now better maybe than I did, but he didn't have to win over the locker room. It was kind of like just natural, right? And Todd, because Todd had done his homework on him, he really liked the guy. So they had that sort of, and I think what Baker has said is, the Bucs have allowed me to be myself again.
Yep.
And that's because Todd wanted that guy, right? That he remembered at Oklahoma.
Well, yeah, luckily Todd wanted him, that we didn't have any kind of fight over that, because he was the one that we wanted as well. And he, we knew what his ceiling was, and that's pretty damn good quarterback. He won a playoff game with.
3rd year.
Yeah. And they haven't won one since.
Yeah.
And
they were 1-32 when they got him.
Right. So whatever happened, thank God it happened for us. But it's extremely rare. And in some of the same ways that Tom chose us, Baker chose us too.
Yeah.
Because he knew that Tom chose us because he was the best place for him to win a Super Bowl.
Right.
Baker chose us because it's the best place for him to revive his career. And for some of the same reasons, you got Mike and Chris.
Got pieces.
You got an offensive line. You got a good coach. You got, all those things.
And stability of a franchise.
And stability of a franchise.
It meant something that everybody here had been together, front office. You guys were all pulling in the same direction. There wasn't agendas, and he was going to be able to just play football and try to win, So that was big for him.
And he's done, obviously has helped this big part in winning, but he's also, those players love playing with him, especially receivers. Who knows if Mike would have chose to come here? Who knows if
That's a good point.
Chris would have signed back?
That's a good point.
They love that guy, and I mean, I'd love to say they want to come here because of a great GM. That
no, but it had to matter.
No, it's because they want somebody that's going to help them on the field too. So I was joking about the good GM thing. So Baker, I hope Baker's here a long time.
Yeah. Well, he certainly lived up to everything you could have hoped him to do. And I'm curious, like, longevity doesn't happen in this league very often. It's hard to win. It's hard to keep to be in a chair. But when you are, we mentioned the continuity. You're part of the 50 years of Buccaneer football, which I'm obviously I've been around longer than you, but not working for them, just kind of observing. But what does it mean to have a Lombardi Trophy in that front office, in that office? What does it mean to work, with the Glazers who have owned this team since '95? Like, what have you gotten as you helped build the culture, but what was here already and the tools that you have to kind of do your job to allow you? Because Jason, I'm not going to look. Not many GMs can go 6 years and not make the playoffs, but they have that much faith in what you're doing that they continue to stick with you. And here comes the reward. We're champions. We're Super Bowl champions and NFC South champions.
Yeah, they certainly. I've talked about it before. They certainly. I have a lot of. I'm grateful that they gave me the chance.
Sure.
First, the initial chance of hiring me, but then stuck with me.
Yeah.
And they didn't have to. I don't know. Bruce didn't walk in here. If it could have been some other coach and one of his own personnel guy.
Possibly, sure.
It could have been a possibility.
Yeah.
But one thing that the team wasn't real talented when I got here.
Right.
There's no quarterback. Not saying that they didn't do their job, just for whatever reason.
Well, I think when you change coaches that many times too, sometimes you each guy has his own vision for what he needs for his offense, for his defense,
and that's hard on any GM.
Yeah,
it really is. So, because I have a lot of respect for Mark and still talk to him to this day.
Yeah.
But one thing that they did that was here was an ownership group that really, really wanted to win. And sometimes fans think that the owners that just spend gobs and gobs of money every year, that's them wanting to win. No, they want to win and they want to sustain it, and they want to win and do things the right way in order to win.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer isn't always just you can't spend over the cap every year.
Right.
You just can't.
Right.
So they guided me through this with Greenberg and Jackie now, but those first years, Greenberg, to do it in a way that once we had an elite team, we were able to keep it together.
Yeah.
Which is a hard thing to do, obviously.
Well, I have said it all the time, threading the needle from Super Bowl champion and not having that big drop off is not what teams do in this league. It's almost inevitable that the bill's going to come due and we're going to fall off a cliff.
Right.
You guys stayed not only competitive, but winning championships.
Which is, it's crazy. Are we the only team ever in the history of the league to follow up a Super Bowl win with 4 consecutive championships?
I think that could be true.
With 2 quarterbacks and 2 head coaches. It's the only one.
I'm willing to say that's probably true. I haven't looked at that way, but yeah, I'd be willing to say that that's true.
And you can't do that. We had to pay the bill, but it could have been a lot worse. But you can't do it without just making sure you're making some, having people help you make good decisions.
Right.
So-and-so's available.
Right.
Go get him.
Right.
Well, okay.
Right.
You do that, it all adds up, and then you really can't do anything. I mean, we were fortunate that we had $4 million in cap room to be able to sign
Baker Mayfield.
That year we were so strapped that
80-something million over the cap.
It affected how we did undrafted free agents.
Yeah.
We couldn't guarantee money.
What the other teams could.
Like, we're talking 20 grand. Greeny at one point had it down to like $10. So it was like so hard. And we got through it, but there were some dark times. But we got through it.
Yeah. What's the best part of about this job outside of the show? I saw Metallica here the other day.
Oh man.
I mean, come on, right? Like you're kind of so many, worldwide fans of those guys. Aside from that, which had to be a cool experience, like what are the things, some of the moments you've seen yourself in that you just said, I never saw this happening?
Oh, yeah. Metallica and AC/DC within 1 month. Those were my two favorite bands. How about that? Unbelievable. I was walking around before the first night of Metallica and just ran into James Hetfield, like standing in our tunnel, just watching the opening act. It was so crazy. That was like outside of football, that was a top 5 moment in my life.
Yeah.
But, really just anything, the Bull Parade
it can't be topped, right?
It can't. It was the
Unless
best.
With another one.
Another one.
Yeah.
But it was the best moment ever. I was with my wife and my kids, and we're sitting there seeing all these fans and
uniquely Tampa.
You can't do this anywhere. I mean, the way that was done anywhere else. And I remember there was like some talk that the city wasn't going to let us do it or something.
Yeah.
And I think it was Darcy got it done. I mean,
she did.
And
it made sense because of COVID that people could still separate through this long parade on the riverfront, and they didn't have to be packed in on a street or in a parade.
Yeah.
Which you would get more closeness and stuff like that. I mean, because COVID was obviously still very much a thing. But yeah, I don't remember. And the Lightning started it. Credit to them for having had one their Stanley Cup win. But that was, I can see where that would be a lifetime highlight of being in that boat with Bruce and the trophy and the whole thing.
Tom Moore smoking cigars. And the other one that comes to mind, I'm probably going to forget something else.
Sure.
Like we went to England, and that wasn't a great trip just because we lost.
Yeah.
But Germany, those fans were incredible. And I just remember going to that brew house and all the Bucs fans from Germany and Switzerland there. And it didn't matter if you were the GM, the head coach. I remember Brad Berlin walks in and they're chanting Brad Berlin's name because they see him on the website and they Bobby Slater, the trainer, like
it's unbelievable.
I mean,
they're so knowledgeable.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And I told my wife, I said, we got to retire in Germany. And
I know.
I
you can't describe Munich. And that stadium was lit. Those international games are interesting anyway, but that one was particularly, and it was Tom Brady. You guys won the game, obviously. Them singing Sweet Caroline, there was some things that were unexpected that week. I mean, it really was. That was unique.
And over these years, I've made some really close friends internationally. I've got this huge Bucs fan from Scotland, Andy, and he showed up.
Yeah.
And
all of Europe.
And then the UK group that I love, they were there. It was there, and they know football too now.
Very much so.
They are a great group. I didn't want to discount them.
No.
I just meant that Germany trip itself, just because of seeing all the fans that descended upon Munich, and it was awesome.
Yeah, it was totally unique, and those are unbelievable memories. So.
My thanks to Jason Licht. We're going to have part 2 of that conversation, talk a little bit about this 2025 football team and what they expect in the coming season. So you're going to be on hand for that, as well as your mailbag questions that we will get to as well. Thanks for listening. As always, go see our friends at Breitling Boutique, International Plaza Mall. Check out the beautiful collection of NFL team watches that they have, as well as watches for your wife, your girlfriend. It's Breitling Boutique International Plaza Mall. Thanks for listening. For Steve Burstick, I'm Rick Stroud of the Tampa Bay Times. Have a great day, everybody.